Chapter 5. Circumcision. Thus far, and yet further, the subjects considered are ones of indifference to modern man, and yet they probably bring a yawn to his face. It will have to be granted that the Bible makes clear that they are important to God. One would therefore expect God to view neglect, for example, of circumcision, and later of baptism, very seriously, and impose penalties for neglect. We see circumcision required in Genesis 17:9-14, 21:4, Exodus 12:48, and Leviticus 12:3. Circumcision is a sign of the covenant, of God's treaty with his people, but failure to be circumcised had no penalty except to bar one from the Passover, Exodus 12:48. This was, of course, a bar from membership and office in the redeemed nation. God clearly did not trust men to punish a disregard for his covenant. This is a very important fact that tells us much about God's government. Where men will thunder threats and kill, God keeps his silence. The penalties of separating ourselves from him are usually enough. The circumcision of the male child was on the 8th day. In the early church, 8th day baptism was practiced for a time. More importantly, the child was not allowed to come of age and then decide on circumcision or later baptism. Salvation is not by man's choice, but by God's choice, and therefore the rites or ordinances of circumcision and baptism make clear in practice that the choice is God's, not a child's. The parents give their child to the Lord with the promise to rear the child in the covenant of grace and law. The rest is up to God. The Bible is a covenant book. It tells us of the covenant, grace, and law. This is the key connection between God and man, his covenant. All the same, he allows us to attach no penalties to our failure to rely on his grace and law. Men have trouble keeping their hands off anything they control. Rome insisted on giving citizenship to every man in the empire, and it thereby made citizenship, first, worthless, and second, a burden because it was accompanied by total controls. Now democracies are moving suicidally towards requiring everyone to vote, including criminals. If baptism is made universal, it is meaningless. God's wisdom most certainly exceeds that of man.